Well, lawmakers are working feverishly on a 2011 budget to avoid a government shutdown, something my next guest says will happen. Stan Collender is the managing director at Qorvis Communications and also a former congressional budget analyst. Stan, great to have you back on the program, and you believe that it is going to happen.
Well, I find it hard to see how John Boehner, the Speaker, is going to satisfy the Tea Party wing of his own party. And under those circumstances, these are folks who don't want to compromise and wouldn't accept him doing a compromise. He might put his own speakership in jeopardy. So I think he's got to let a shutdown happen just to show the Tea Party that he was willing to do it and to show them how bad it's going to be for them.
Is it going to be traumatic for the economy as other shutdowns have been?
Well, it depends how long it goes. Obviously, the longer it goes on, the more likely it is that government contractors, businesses that do work with the government, are going to be affected. I think this first one, if it happens, will last 6 or 7 days, and while that will be difficult for a lot of folks who want to get into national parks and things, it shouldn't have that much of an impact on the economy. But if it goes much longer than a week, you will see government contractors starting to lay off people. You will see businesses around the government contractors start to be affected. It's really not the right way to run a railroad, and it's certainly not the way to run a government.
No, and at some point, though, something has to happen, of course, and the deadlock has to be broken. Why don't you think the $33 billion in concessions that the Democrats have put together, why don't you think that that's working?
Well, it's first of all, it's not that I don't think it's an insignificant amount, because it is obviously $33 billion. I'm not the one that has the vote here and may not and doesn't have the real lever. It's the 87 freshman Republicans in the House who rejected a $32 billion package that its own leadership put out early in the year. They said it just wasn't enough. So the question is, I mean, the real question for everyone to watch is, can John Boehner possibly convince the Tea Party wing of his own party that $32 billion is enough? I'm just not sure it's going to happen.
No, it doesn't sound like it. It doesn't. From what they've said, no.
Right. Right. And yeah.
No,
yeah,
go ahead.
Please. Well, I mean, the other thing to watch is the Democrats here. Now, when the last continuing resolution, the last funding bill for the government, was adopted 3 weeks ago, it was only adopted because of Democratic support. Let's see if the Democrats are willing to play and what they demand in return. That's the other real lever here for the next week. I mean, this is all not numbers and not economics. It's all politics.
How does this stand set the tone then for more fiscal discussions or negotiations as we get into the 2012 elections?
Well, I mean, that's exactly the right question, Betty. Let's remember, while $32 billion, $33 billion is not insignificant, it's not going to really deal with the long-term problem. Tomorrow, Paul Ryan, as you had on your air earlier this morning, is going to announce, he's the chairman of the Budget Committee, is going to announce his proposed budget, which will be for 2012 and beyond. Right. It will have big cuts in Medicare and Medicaid. It's going to be very, very difficult. This is a harbinger of things to come. I suspect if this ends ugly, that is with the shutdown, we're going to see more threats of shutdowns and other types of disruptions as the year goes along.
Right, and certainly it's going to be more and more difficult, particularly as we head towards also, which is sort of the next, the next phase in this, which is talking about the debt ceiling. This doesn't bode well for any discussions on that front either, right?
Right. The good news about the debt ceiling is that, unlike some of the early reporting, what Bloomberg's had is correct. That is, there's not an immediate default if the government reaches the debt ceiling. The government doesn't shut down if it reaches the debt ceiling. In fact, my estimation is that the government can go 6 months or maybe even more without having to borrow additional amounts of money. It can roll over existing debt. So it's not like a funding bill, like the continuing resolution that's going to expire, where there'd be an immediate impact. It will not make the bond market real happy, though, as auctions are postponed and as there's a great deal of uncertainty injected into the system.
Stan, before I leave you, I mean, just to get back to that Paul Ryan budget, I think it's $4 trillion in cuts. Is it, though, dead on arrival, essentially?
Oh, yeah, it's way beyond dead on arrival. It is a good symbolic discussion, but all of the polling shows that there's no support, even within the Tea Party, for the massive reductions in Medicare and Medicaid that Ryan is proposing. I'm not even sure there's not going to be enough support within the Republican Party to get that Paul Ryan vote out of the budget out of the House. Okay,
but it certainly is a big opening shot from him. Stan, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us. Stan Collender, the managing director of Qorvis Communications and also a former congressional budget analyst.